Anybody else like amusement parks? I love them. You got the rush of the air on the ride, the smell of fried dough, the sound of children screaming. It's exhilarating and so much fun, you know? But do you know what's not fun? Being told you're too short for a ride. Anyone else ever have that happen to you? You see a ride that has a height requirement, maybe it's like 54 inches or 60 inches, and when you go to get up on the ride, you have to stand against this measuring stick to see if you can make it on. I remember growing up, I would often wear my tallest shoes and I'd wear multiple pairs of socks just so I could try to add just a little bit more height to get me on the rides that I wanted to ride. And I remember one year, despite my tallest shoes and my straightest posture, I was still too short to get on this super cool ride called the UFO. And then I had to do the walk of shame. You guys know, the walk of shame. It's where all your friends are laughing and jumping onto the ride and you're walking sadly out the exit to watch them enjoy the ride while you watch from a safe distance, safe enough for a short person like you. It stinks. But it doesn't just happen at amusement parks. We have situations like this all the time, where someone who's older than you looks down on you. Maybe physically, but also it might just be in the way that they treat you. Where you wanted to be liked, to be trusted, to be thought of as responsible, but then you weren't. And it is a terrible feeling. Maybe it even made you believe that you really weren't capable of making a difference. Last week we talked about some of the reasons why being young is pretty great, even though sometimes you probably wish you were older. And the biggest thing we talked about is that you can make a difference in the world right now. You just got to start by believing it. We looked at a guy who's young and his name was Timothy. He was chosen by the Apostle Paul to be a leader in the church in a city called Ephesus. And Paul's words to Timothy were these. He said, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you're young." And maybe last week you decided to believe that you really can make a difference. But maybe this week you're worried about how you can actually go about doing that. And not everyone understands how awesome you are. I know being a middle schooler is not easy. You deal with some tough stuff all the time. And I think maybe some adults forget what it was like when they were in middle school. They forget just how hard it can be sometimes. But there's another thing that adults forget about being in middle school too. I think some adults forget just how awesome being young actually can be. I mean, sure, some adults might see a few candy wrappers on the floor and assume you can't change the world because you can't even remember to pick up your trash. So how do you show adults or authority figures in your life that you really can make a difference? How can you help them see that you can make a change in the world right now? That's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to continue looking at the letter that Paul wrote to Timothy. And Timothy was kind of like his apprentice or his Padawan, if you will, if you're into Star Wars. Timothy was young, definitely, but Paul still thought he was ready to lead. And we read last week, and we're going to check it out again, 1 Timothy 4:12. It says, "Don't let anyone think less of you because you're young. Be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way that you live, in your love, in your faith, and in your purity." He's saying, you can do this, Timothy. But now let's move down a couple of verses. 1 Timothy 4:15. It says this, "Give your complete attention to these matters. Throw yourself into your tasks so that everyone will see your progress." Whoa. I mean, there's two big things here that Paul is telling Timothy, and I think they're for us too. He says, believe that you can do something big for God. And then he says, don't just believe that you can make a difference, but show it with your life. Show that you can make a difference. He's telling him to prove it. Walk it like you talk it. What people think of you is shaped by what they see you do. Paul's kind of like Timothy's group leader or his pastor, and he's giving him really good advice here. He's saying it's hard to look down on someone for being young when they're already doing amazing things. That's what Paul was reminding Timothy to do, to keep being an example in his speech, in his conduct, in his love, in his faith, and in his purity. To work hard, to not give up, to grind. Paul's telling him that if his faith was an amusement park ride, he's not too short for this ride. So even if some of the people around Timothy were grumpy about being led by someone who was so young, Timothy's commitment to being an example of a faithful follower of Jesus is actually what mattered. He didn't give up just because people gave him a hard time. In fact, he kept serving God faithfully, and he proved he was not too young to lead. And the truth is, Timothy's not the only one. Young people are setting an example to this day. I hear about so many of you guys serving in kid ministry on the weekends, leading younger students, or even students who lead in their schools or on their sports teams by praying or leading Bible studies. So many of you are making a difference and leading all around you. One young person, just like you, can make an impact in the world and inspire other people to do the same too. If you want to make a difference, prove that you can. Don't let somebody else's negative opinions about middle schoolers keep you from making a difference. You know, there's always going to be older people who don't understand you or who think teenagers are the worst. You won't be able to change what every adult thinks, but that's okay. There are a ton of coaches, teachers, pastors, parents, and people who love you and who believe in you. People who cheer you on and who know middle schoolers can do amazing things. What adults may or may not think about you because of your age is out of your hands. You can't control that, but you need to hear this. You can't choose what people think about you, but you can choose how to respond. You get to choose whether or not you're going to live a life that's committed to being Christ-like in your speech, your conduct, your love, your faith, and your purity, or not. But when you live that way, adults will notice. When people see how dedicated you are to living out your faith, it's going to inspire them, adults, and other young people too. Show others that you can make a difference right now as a middle schooler by the way that you live. You're not too short to ride. Show them with your life, your decisions, your passion, your faith, and your great ideas that you can make a difference. And remember, if you want to make a difference, first, you got to believe that you can. And then, get out there and prove it. So as you head to small groups today, here's a question to think about. What's one thing you can do this week to prove that you can make a difference? We love you. We'll see you next time.